Yeah, yeah. You pointing is hilarious. What's that yellow joint?
It's Corey's wall, man.
Corey, wow.
Corey,
Anyway,
Corey,
yeah, we went on live with a big block of yellow. What is that?
that's my wall.
That's your wall.
I'm trying to switch devices.
You trying to switch to what?
Switch to my iPad.
Oh, switch devices. All
Well,
right.
man.
No, he just was. He just. That wall is that Jesus shining behind him. It's always with him.
Tell him, Joe. Tell him, Joe.
I don't know.
We are live. We've been live.
I don't think that's Jesus shining, but anyway, what's up? Welcome, Tuesday Topic fam. It's another Tuesday Topic live.
Hey.
We got the man Corey. He's been missing for a while, so Corey Goss on the line. Man, Joshua. I'm sorry, Bowditch, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Joshua Bowditch. Y'all saw him last week. Him and Seiko was getting it in. Pastor Seiko. Shouts out to Pastor Seiko. Vic, the veteran. Corey with the head shake. But anyway, Vic, the veteran over there. We see you, man, young boy. Vic Stanley. And then we got Pastor.
Say his last name.
Huh?
Say his last name.
Say who's last name?
Who you about to
That's
announce?
last name.
I can pronounce any last name because my name is Anye and spelled all kinds of crazy. I probably can't pronounce his.
That's okay, man. I look at your name and I go Alajanene, yeah. Go.
That's even better with the cycling.
Yo, what in the world?
That was Corey, man. He was in here twice.
Yeah,
Now he blacked out.
he likes to be at two places at once. He wants to be like Jesus.
I'm omnipresent, baby.
So anyway, Mr. Joe and last name will not pronounce. What's your last name, Joe?
Salmaraji.
Salmaraji. Did you know that, Vic?
Yeah, I knew that.
I mean, I know you've been with him for a while, but I don't know. Salmaraji. All right, so we got three people from the same camp. I don't know how that's going to play out from the same teachings. I don't know about that. Then we got the rebel Corey. He way out there. I don't know where he is. He just out there. And then we got me that's underneath them all, just trying to learn, just trying to come up. You know.
Dude, what's up with Corey's face? Anybody else see his frozen face? Looks like.
Nah, I don't even see it right now at the bottom of the screen. Anyway, so look, Tuesday Topic Live. We are yeah, now I see it. It's crazy looking. We are gonna talk about youth, and everybody always has something to say about youth. We got some crazy youth event names. We got some people, agreeing and disagreeing about ways to bring up and train the youth. We have people that are for youth establishments. We have people that are against youth establishments and have different beliefs, biblically based. And so we're going to talk about youth today. We're going to talk about hopefully any questions that you guys have. I'm going to throw some questions to the panel and see if we can get some clarity on how to train up these youth and the appropriation of youth ministries, youth pastors, how to build our youth groups, and basically talk about the whole gamut of youth ministry and youth development in the Word and in Christ, and how to go about that whole thing. So I want to start out by saying I'm your man Scope, just in case you didn't know, and you can hit us up at the website www.scopeclearly.com/Tuesday Topic. Get your questions, your comments in there. Hit us with different topics you want to discuss. And you can hit me up on Twitter at ScopeClearly. If you want to get questions in there, you can just hashtag Tuesday Topic Live. I will see your stuff, and I will get the questions in to the panel. I'm going to throw it to my man Vic. Vic, throw your info out, and then we'll throw it over to Corey.
Yeah, real quick, though, because I see somebody sent a question in already. They just wanted to know if we're youth pastors or youth whatever. So
state your name, gangster.
I'm Vic. Joe, who you'll meet in a second, is a youth pastor, and Corey is a youth pastor in training.
I'm not a pastor.
Youth director in training. Youth director in training. So OB Richardson. There you have it. So, but I'm Vic. You can check me out on Twitter at VicJr89. It's VICJR89. You can check out my blog at vicsponderings.blogspot.com. So, yeah.
Cool. Corey, what's up, man? Pastor Corey, give me your information, man.
Yo, it's your man C. Goss in the building. Hit me up. Twitter, IMC Goss. Facebook. What's my Facebook? Corey. No. Goss, FOE. And then hit me on Instagram, IMC Goss. I'm in these streets, baby.
What streets? All
I'm in
right.
these youth ministry streets, son. It's real out here.
Word. All right. Anyway. So Joe Salmonella, hit them with your information, man. How they can contact you.
I think we need to have a talk. We need to have one-on-one, some biblical conversations. Go. No. I'm Joe Salmaraji. You can hit me up at joseph.salmaraji@gmail.com. That's my Google and everything else. Twitter is at SalmoJoe.
He said you can hit me up at Joe Salmaraji. Who's gonna know how to spell that?
Just talk to Vic.
They're gonna be looking for you for years.
If you're friends with Vic or Scope or Corey on Google Plus, you'll find me. I'll be the only one with that name.
Cool. All right, and we got my man Josh over there getting his last minute studies in. Yo, hit him up with your info. Let them know how they can reach you.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, just Joshua, like in the Bible, and then Bowditch, Bowditch, bowing into a ditch. Hit me up on there, private message, friend me, poke me, whatever. We can chat. I'm happy to talk about anything.
This dude said poke me. Wow. Go ahead. He said reach me anyway. All right, so let's get into it. So I want to talk about youth today. Like I said, it's kind of a heavy topic. Not heavy in the sense of weight or gravity, but heavy in the sense of so many people, especially our age, deal with youth, talk to youth, train youth, lead youth, or whatever. And so there should be there's a lot of do's and don'ts, and I know Corey is a major player in the do's and don'ts category. I'm gonna go to him a little bit later, but it's a lot of do's and don'ts when dealing with youth, and I feel like the leadership of our youth either need to be trained better or need to discern better or whatever the case is, because there's a lot of misled youth for many different reasons. But I wanted to talk about the youth groups and their purpose and or their effectiveness, and if youth groups are important or effective. And first I want to kind of throw it to Pastor Joe and see what you feel about youth groups in general, if they're effective as a whole and if they're necessary as a whole.
Be good if I unmute my button. There we go. You know, that's a really good question. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm just starting out to do this walk. I mean, I've been an adult youth leader before. I've been a high schooler that was a leader within the youth groups, and I can say this: I think it depends on the church you're going to and the heart and mission of the church. And I say that because there are churches I've been to where their youth groups can have hundreds of youth, and they have no discernible cultural or any type of impact on our spiritual impact on the kids. As in, I've seen pastors that all they care about is, I'm pulling in a couple hundred kids, I'm awesome, and that's all they focus on. On the other hand, I've seen youth groups where, the pastors are pouring their entire hearts and lives, and so are the adult leaders, into these kids to spiritually mature them and get them ready to be out there in the real world.
Well, let me ask this, Corey. So if there's not a direct spiritual impact, is it still okay? So in other words, what I'm asking is engaging the youth enough to keep them around until their maturity hits a point where they begin to receive and eat the meat of the word? Is just engaging them enough, or is that in itself sinful or misleading? How do you feel about that, Corey?
Well, I think because we're especially children who don't know nothing about Jesus, or teens, your average teen is not going to want to know anything about Jesus. You have to get them in some kind of way. So I think that's why we separate the the adult service from the youth service. Now, when you go to youth service, I've seen a lot of different methods taken, but I think the way that we engage them is, I think it's okay. But once you get them in, then you have to, give them the gospel, give them the word. Now, depending on their hearts and depending on everything, that I think that depends on how they're going to react to the word and like how they're going to, actually abide by it. But I don't think there's no problem with doing things that attract them to try to get them in. I mean, Jesus did it all the time, when he was with the disciples or like when he was healing people. He first did the work and then he told them about his message, but he first gave them what they wanted. And then he told them, hey, this is this, now I want you guys to come follow me. But then he did make it evident that, don't follow me because of what I've done for you, but follow me just because I'm me. So I think with anything, you have to have some kind of thing to pull them in, and then.
Corey got cut off. Corey got dropped. Yeah, because Vic didn't like his response, so that's cool. Since Vic didn't like his response, man, how do you feel about the establishment of youth ministries and their effectiveness, Vic? Because you come from a church, your pops is a pastor, correct?
Yeah.
And they have a youth program in the church. We won't get into whether you agree with, the leadership of that or not, but how do you feel about youth ministry as a whole or youth organization as a whole?
I think that it's been largely ineffective since its inception, which, I guess technically it goes back 100 years or so, but I think culturally it really took flight in the 80s, maybe late 70s, 80s. So when it just took off. You have this whole youth culture, and even now in churches, I go to a church, and in the adult service, it's like for young people. They got laser lights and smoke machines going and stuff.
Yeah.
It's really very young people oriented. But I think it's ineffective. Pew Research Center, which is a prestigious institute that releases a lot of statistics on all types of topics. It's been releasing statistics this year, last year, I think the year before too, showing that people from about 18 to 35 are leaving churches in masses. They're gone. They're non-existent in the church as a whole. Now, sure, there's people that can say, hey, at my church, we have those people. The church I go to, the average age is like 25 years old. So it's nothing but young people. But those are anomalies. Research shows that young people are not in church. You got to think that 18 to 35 age group are the ones that came up in youth groups from the 80s through the 90s into the early 2000s and stuff. That's the age group we're talking about, the people that were previously kids that were brought up in youth groups, yet we see the minute they turn 18, they're not only are they leaving the youth group, they're leaving the church and they're not coming back. So obviously there's some type of issue with youth groups where they're not having spiritual effect on the kids, at least based on the statistics.
Josh, I'm gonna throw it to you in just a second. Joe, I wanted to ask you real quick. Vic touched on the culture of youth ministry. Would you agree that there's more so a culture than there is an actual spiritual movement? It's just kind of like a youth culture.
I can agree and disagree, and I can agree with everything he's saying because, like I said before, there are probably more so youth groups out there that are they're engaging the youth, but they're not going beyond the engagement. They are just attracting the youth, or parents are just kind of dropping the kids off there as a babysitting service.
Yeah.
To just kind of leave them in the care and kind of go, well, all right, youth pastor will take care of them, And I totally agree with that, because if they're not being engaged and then like like we said before, giving them the meat and the potatoes and actually showing them how to live the life, and they actually choose to live the life, yeah, they're just going to leave and never come back. Because there's going to be no commitment, there's going to be no reason to stay. I've seen way too many youth groups where, like Vic said, it's laser light shows and parties and loud music, but it's like that's all they're doing is they're just engaging the culture. They're not doing anything about it after they've engaged them, though.
Right. Okay. And Josh, so I've heard from the other guys. How do you feel about the establishment of the youth group? Is it even, first of all, before we get into the effectiveness, is it purposeful? Is there a purpose to it? Is there should we be having youth ministries and youth establishments at all?
Okay, yeah, definitely appreciate it, man. For me, as far as is it purposeful, I'm of the belief that youth ministry as a whole, as Vic had said, is ineffective, and we've all kind of talked about different ways in which it kind of manifests itself and it's not working. But for me, I think that youth ministry as it stands right now does more harm than it does good. I think there's no clear biblical mandate for the current approach. I also think that the current approach may actually be working against the biblical model of how to disciple children. And then I think finally, the current approach just isn't working.
Yeah.
So to answer that question as far as purposeful, I mean, we got to dig into that. The second point I just made about actually working against the biblical model. And I'd love to go deeper there if you give me the time for it.
Yeah. Let's get into that a little bit. And so, what without playing God, what is your take on how we can better align ourselves with the Bible as far as youth ministry is concerned? Because I noticed you said some things about it not working. Who's that, Corey again? I noticed you said some things about it not working and not aligning with biblical principles. Where have we gone wrong, and how can we get back to aligning? So in other words, it's okay for youth ministry if it aligns, correct? You're not in disagreement with youth ministry?
I would probably, to be honest and forthright, I am actually a youth group abolitionist.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is pretty clear. One of the biggest people who are proponents for youth ministry is a guy named Doug Fields. And Doug Fields is the head of youth group for Saddleback with Rick Warren's church. And this is his quote when he talks about the purpose of youth ministry. He says, "Any youth ministry is capable of growth when it is built on God's purposes for the church. This material in this chapter will help you discover God's 5 purposes for a healthy ministry. These purposes are the vital component, the cornerstone for constructing a youth ministry that enjoys long-term health and growth." So that model comes from Rick Warren's church, Saddleback, which has been almost kind of carbon copied and planted into other churches by people just seeing the effectiveness of it there. For me, I would say that quote right there alone kind of is my red flag. Any youth ministry is capable of growth when it's built upon God's purposes for the church. I'm an abolitionist because I think the best thing, people who are for youth ministry, and I think I've heard Corey and Joe say it so far, they say there are some issues and they need to be changed, they need to be reformed. Okay, well, if we're going to reform something, we have to go back to its original biblical purpose. How did God design the function of a church in the discipleship, which is what youth ministry is supposed to be, the discipleship of children? So we go back to the Bible and we say, okay, God, what are you saying is the right way to do this? What are you prescribing to us? And when I go into the Word, I don't see a clear biblical mandate for youth ministry as a program. A age-segregated teaching where the kids are pulled away from their parents, segregated by age groups from children all the way up to college age, career age, and then they're kind of given teaching specifically for them in the way they like to hear it, for topics that they believe are relevant to them. I don't see a clear biblical mandate for that anywhere in the Word. And just a caveat, not to say, hey, the Bible doesn't say use a microphone, the Bible doesn't say use PowerPoint slides, so we can't have them. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying when we look at it from a spiritual perspective, we don't see anywhere in the Word where you have a mandate or a teaching for youth ministry as we see it today. So because there's no biblical mandate, and because the current model is actually working against the biblical model, and then finally because it's not, the current approach just doesn't work at all, I would say for those reasons, I say abolish it and go back to the biblical approach to discipleship for children.
Okay.
Can y'all see me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd rather not, but we do see you. Yeah. Corey, but since we see you now, hey, you heard what Josh said, right? I know you got cut off before.
Yes, I heard that foolishness.
I wanted to go to you specifically. How would you respond, and how do we, if it's not working, and if what Josh is saying is accurate about the youth ministry in its core and how it's basically having a negative impact not only on the church but our youth and the whole body, because if we're being dismembered, obviously it's having a negative impact. How do we get back to the roots of positive impact in youth ministry? How do we make it? What's up?
To answer the first question, to say youth ministry is not working, you could say the same thing about adult ministry. Adult ministry is not going to grab everybody in the whole entire church. Everybody in the whole entire church is not going to get saved. The same way with youth ministry. You can preach the gospel, but everybody in that whole service is not going to get saved. That's number one. Number two, if you ask me, Timothy was Paul's youth pastor.
What?
Paul, listen. Paul told Timothy what about children? What did he specifically say about the youth?
Cool. No. Chill right there. Let's pop over to Titus chapter 2. Look at verse 4. These older women, must train the younger women to love their husbands and their children. And then you look at verse 6, and it says to live wisely, so living wisely, loving your husbands, loving your children, being pure, working in the home, doing good, being submissive to their husbands in an Ephesians context, not in a caveman context. And then number 6, in the same way, encourage young men to live wisely. So again, that's what the word talks about. That's Titus, who was trained by Timothy, who was obviously trained by Paul. So that's what it looks like.
So,
where'd he go?
Yeah, he popped out. I'm gonna let you get in on that, Joe.
Bible stuff, man. Ran him off.
Yeah. I am understanding where Josh is coming from. I understand where Corey's coming from, because let's admit it, we've all, I can imagine all of us that are here, if we've been to youth group, we've seen good and we've seen bad. We've seen, some of us can say we're products of a good youth group. I can say I am. I can say that it was because of youth group that I accepted the Lord, and it's because of youth group that I was able to stand firm in my faith. What that should look like in the present time, as more youth groups are doing more engagement than they are actual maturity-based stuff, I can say I'm not an abolitionist. I'd be more of a reformist along Josh's lines there. It's really a tough subject. I mean, we're talking about a young generation. We're talking about a different mindset than probably what we grew up having, and we have to adapt to that. And that I think is the hardest thing to do.
Can I address that really quickly?
Absolutely.
So when you had said I got saved in the youth ministry, and also I am still kind of following and still still in the faith, as it were, because of the nurturing environment of a youth ministry. and then you also said that you, rather than being an abolitionist, you said you're more a reformer. And that's where my earlier point about if we're going to reform it, what is that going to look like? What does it look like to take it back to its because again, to reform is to, it's like a car. Your car has a busted headlight and the seats are frayed and the cushions are popping out of the leather. To reform that car is to refurbish the car. New seats, new lights. Bring it back to when it first came off the factory model. Bring it back to its form when the engineer who designed it first created it. So in this case, using the analogy further, God's the engineer. If the church is the car, you guys are saying, hey, our headlights are busted and the tailpipe's dragging. We got to fix this. What I'm saying is, hey, we need to take the jacuzzi out the back of the truck because it's ruining the entire vehicle. You know, I'm saying we have something in here that's not meant to be, and I think that's what the problem is.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I mean, this is the way I look at it.
Hey, let me finish. So,
obviously,
what would you propose as a biblical?
Well, here's what I get at. Obviously, we know we don't need to tweak the gospel. Obviously, the gospel is what brings us to the saving knowledge of Christ. We don't need to tweak it. What we have to work on, and this is what I mean, I only know from the background I came from. I've seen other youth groups. I've seen how they are. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent. For me, when I think of reforming and getting back to the basics is, it would probably be fantastic to be the most popular youth pastor in the universe and have 300 kids coming to my service. But you know what? I would rather have 6 to 10 people as a youth group and almost have true discipleship with them. And that's why I think youth ministries still need to exist. Obviously, these days, I'm 32. I'm not a 22-year-old ragamuffin that's running around. I'm not fresh out of college. I'm not, going to Bible college going, I'm going to be a youth pastor, because that's what everyone seemed to say when I went to Bible college. Everyone was like, I'm going to be a youth pastor. And I was like, you're all crazy. Why would you want to do that? The way I look at it is, to get back to basics, yes, I believe there should still be a separate youth ministry. But like Titus talks about, there has to be people of a certain age that can be with them, walk them through life, not a 22-year-old who's fresh out of getting his bachelor's degree in youth ministries.
That's one of my points.
Yeah, to me, me at 32, I can at least give some life experience to these kids. I can talk to them the good, the bad choices I made. I can take from my history and walk them through certain things and problems they're going through with. A 22-year-old can't really do that.
Okay.
See, my youth pastor growing up, he was an older guy, late 30s, had a lot of that wisdom. So I feel that's not a problem. I feel that can still be done if you have someone that has the heart for the youth. They are a different culture than the adults. They're not going to like the same things. They're not going to be engaged the same way, no matter how much we try, or to force them to sit there and be like us and to sit with us in the pews and do what we want. It's just not going to work.
What about the thousands of years prior to youth ministry existing, that children sat in the services with their parents? Jesus sat in the temple and learned from the rabbis. It's clear that Timothy was young and was trained up by Paul. You have Samuel, who was put in the temple and trained by Eli. These all throughout the Bible. Actually, at no point in the Bible do you ever see children separated from adults when it comes to learning. And the only time we see that happening, Jesus chastises the people for trying to keep the children away. So we never see that even up through history into early American history, the Puritans and onward, we don't see children separated from the adults when it comes to learning. This is relatively new. It's relatively.
And I think that's our Western culture. I think that's a great idea. Wouldn't that be awesome if every single adult in the church took the time and the energy of their salvation in life and actually mentored disciples one-on-one? Because that's what you're talking about. You're talking about having where they sit there and they would disciple these people. It should be the job of us as parents to disciple our own children, but our Western culture says, I just don't have the time. I'm too busy. So you know what? I'm going to drop them off and let them be babysat on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings, and that's just the culture. So unless the culture does a massive shift in its thinking inside and outside the walls of the church, you're not going to see young people sitting in the church with their adult parents or being mentored by other adults.
But how can the church's culture make a shift, keeping in mind that the church is supposed to set the culture? We're supposed to be the tea in the water, influencing the world around us. How can the culture in the church change to where parents take responsibility in a Deuteronomy 5 and Deuteronomy 6 and Ephesians 6 way for the discipleship of their children if their leadership is enabling them? If the leadership is saying, hey,
Right,
drop
shouldn't
your
it be
kids
the
off
other
with
way
me,
around?
I'll take care of them, don't try this at home, kind of, if that's the ministry model. The ministry model is designed to enable parents to shirk their biblically mandated, this is not some kind of exegetical just interpretation that's, siloed in my worldview. It's just straight reading the Bible, just straight reading Deuteronomy 5 or Deuteronomy 6. We let them shirk that responsibility when we let them bring their kids, and you drop off Scooter, and Scooter goes to youth group, and then he gets babysat for 2 hours. Well,
I agree with you. I am not at all going to disagree. No, well, let me help you with that, because now we're treading into major cultural intersections here, because now we're speaking as if every parent was a Christian and would know that or could be taught that and would follow through with what you're saying, which that would be a perfect universe. That would be that would be awesome if our leaders put their foot down and said, hey, you as Christian parents, and that would eliminate youth groups. But now let's go to the church I'm at.
Okay.
No, I'm serious.
I know.
The parents that are dropping their kids off are not saved in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
We've got dads in jail. We've got dads that have been deported. We have moms that are prostitutes, hoes, and drug dealers. They could be in jail. We've got people that are just kind of showing up to church. They're just they don't even know who God is. But they're bringing their kids to youth group because they remember being young and being like, they need this because they don't want their kids on the streets. Or we've got literal drug dealers and potheads and druggies and gangbangers that basically they have nowhere else to go, and we're the only place that will take care of them or give them activity. So we don't have the ability at this moment to even train their parents to be biblical parents, because they're going to look at us and go, what are you talking about? They're not going to understand right now.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and that's a real pain that most churches feel. Every kid who comes to a youth ministry currently, keeping in mind that it's a current way we're doing churching, and we have youth ministries and kids are coming. Some of their parents are the most dedicated, involved believers in the church. Some of them, like you mentioned, are just dropping the kid off, kicking him out the door, and driving away. But even in that scenario, the scenario of youth ministry for kids who don't have Christian parents, even for them, youth ministry, as it is right now, is not the best option. If we had a family integrated model with the biblical option, a family integrated type of model where you would have church services with intact Christian families that can model worship and faith, where you've got dad next to Junior, next to mom, next to Susie, and then you've got Billy, whose mom might be one of these absentee parents, but Billy gets to watch that family unit worship as a family. That is a much more biblical, much healthier model for that child.
And that takes time. I'm sorry, Scope, that Josh and I are, kind of taking over the whole conversation. But that takes time, and you know that, Josh. That's going to take time, because that takes literally a top-down review of everything. That means you got to re-educate.
It comes from the leadership. The shepherds guide the sheep. If the sheep are moving towards the cliff, okay, I don't care if all 100 sheep are moving towards the cliff. Listen, I've got the crook, I've got the sandals, I've got the beard. I'm coming to get you, and I'm going to stop you from going towards that. We don't let the sheep determine the way the flock's going. The shepherd has to set the path.
Yeah. No, I
know it's not easy, but I think it's interesting because it's funny. Because we have two problems happening concurrently. On the one hand, our youth are drifting out of the church. You see so this was T.C. Pinckney actually wrote a report to the SBC, Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee, and he said that we're losing the majority of our youth by the end of their freshman year, 70 to 80% walking out the door. We see that less than 10% of churched teens have a biblical worldview. Half of church members are probably not born again. The only place where we're seeing a high amount of retention rates of students are the ones where they have a parent, father or mother, who are actively discipling them in the home. That's what we're seeing as the deciding factor. Now, that's one side of the problem. The other side of the problem is we see this disengagement with men in the church.
Oh yeah.
They go to church. They go to work during the week. They have They may have 5 direct reports. They may be managing a budget of $50 million.
What's one of the most dying ministries in any church? It's the men's ministry. What's
Right.
one of the most dead and stale ministries?
Because we stole it and rebranded it as youth ministry. These men sit there in the pews. We pat them on the head and say, "I have a theological degree." So you sit there and smile and I'll spoon feed you stuff, and then we take their kids from them and put them over here. What if we spent all of our time teaching these men how to be husbands and fathers?
And I think, and then when you talk about the cultural, when you talk about the
decided by your parents, and then the dads are coming in here, the moms are working together, and then the whole church is moving in the same direction. And you're not redoubling.
But like you said, I mean, you kind of pointed out the culture, especially for men, in this Western culture, in this United States of America, we work hard, we work long hours, and it really disengages us from the church life. And we choose to do that for rest or because we just don't want to do it. Now, the other problem we're running into is we are not like the days of old, like the Puritans and the medieval we don't have, we don't have young people that we take under our umbrella or our wing, and we don't train them up in a job and in how to be life and how to do life. Like, it just doesn't happen like that anymore. And it's just something that we've completely walked away from. I mean, you look at, back in the early 1900s, you had apprentices, and to me that was, that's almost an example of what the church should be doing, is having that apprenticeship. It's discipleship at its most basic level, but we don't do that. What we have now is we have Josh Bowditch, who is a manager over 13 people, and they're like, hey, let's just model that, because it's easier to have one person watch 20 people than to find 20 volunteers or find 20 dads or moms that are going to be willing to mentor 20 kids.
What you're saying though is we should let the culture dictate how the church behaves.
No.
What I hear Joe saying is that he's just identified the problem is, he's saying the problem is our culture, and I agree that for the past 50 years, with the advent of youth ministry, with the massive uptick in youth leadership degrees being pumped out from seminaries, doubling their revenues, you see this massive uptick. He's saying our culture in America, and it's only the past 50 years, keeping in mind that the apostles 2,000 years ago, we are allowing it to happen because of the culture. And what I hear Joe saying is that we're doing the best we can with what we have because of the way the culture is and the problem we have. Keep in mind, everyone on this call is under 40 years old. We all grew up with youth ministry as something that existed. Before we existed, there was youth ministry. So for us, it's always been there as a part of the church. Only to come now is to being full adults doing our own research and study to find out it's a recent advent that's not working, and now it's up to us to course correct, to change the way we're going. That's what I hear Joe saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe.
No, I mean, no simple terms, yeah.
Corey, I know you had a reaction to Josh. I wanted to get your thoughts in there before we get too far. Corey?
Yeah, I know my internet's acting crazy, so I'm just going to stay on this phone. I think that, like I said, back to my point, I think if Paul had a specific church that he would pastor at, Timothy would be his youth pastor, if you ask me. And then another scriptural backing that I have for it is that Paul even said, I become all that I may win one. Because Paul even knew that you can't, Jesus never talked to people above their heads. He talked to them where they were at. Okay? He spoke parables to the world, and he spoke theological to his disciples. So if we keep all our kids in one service and we keep everybody in one service, that's more dangerous of them not hearing it than them getting a chance to hear it in a terms that they can understand. So do you want 0 chance of them getting it, or do you want 10% chance of them getting it?
So
And to say youth ministry is ineffective, I think that is a false statement. I think that
Based on what?
I think
What
that's a
successes
blanket
are you pointing to for youth ministry to refute the idea that it's a false statement?
I didn't hear what you say. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I said, well, you just said, you made the claim that to say that youth ministry isn't working that's a false statement. I'm saying, okay, what are you pointing towards? What are you basing that on? What data are you pulling from, or like what are you?
When
what other
something,
things you have?
when you say not working, that means like my internet wasn't working, so it disconnected us, right?
I mean, like 10% of teenagers in churches in America don't have a biblical worldview. I mean that when they leave high school and get to college, 70 to 88% walk away from the faith.
And you're
That's what
saying
I'm talking
those
about.
numbers, and you're saying those numbers would change if they were in the main service with their pastor.
Well, no, not just that, because that's not the fix. And that's what I want to eventually get to.
that's exactly
The fix. Here's the fix. I'm just going to put the fix out, and then we can maybe go in that direction. The fix is to return to a biblical model. And the biblical model, I'll give it to you right here. This is coming out of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 6. This is verse 4. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving to you today. In chapter 5, he gave the 10 commandments. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you were at home, and when you were on the road, and when you were going to bed, and when you were getting up. Tie them to your hands, wear them on your forehead as reminders, write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And you can cross-reference that with Ephesians 5, 6, 1 through 4. Children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you, and you will have a long life on the earth. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up in the discipline, connection to discipleship, discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. And then the final connection there is if you look at Deuteronomy 5, verse 16, honor your father and mother as the Lord commands you, then you will live a long and full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. So what we just did is we were in Deuteronomy, and then we went to Ephesians. So we touched on the 10 commandments, we went to Old Testament, then we went to New Testament, and we see a complete agreeing across from Old to New Testament of a biblical model. The biblical model for children and discipleship for youth ministry is for the church.
That has nothing to do with youth ministry.
Is for the church to equip parents to then disciple their kids. Because you, Joe, and you, Corey, can't go home with the kids. I wish you could. Or I wish you could invite them all into your house and have 40 kids living with you.
Well, let me throw this question out. So let me throw this question out. So if we have youth ministry at the state, at the way in the state that it is right now, and youth groups at the state that it is right now, or the provided the way it is right now and today, what is the issue with that if we still train our parents because regardless of what the church is doing, the parents in the home should be doing their duties. They should be discipling their kids. They should be reading with them. They should be praying with them. They should be showing the way a man and a woman should grow, treat each other in a household, all the biblical ways in action, in lifestyle.
Definitely.
So if that is the case, then is youth ministry still wrong? Because if youth ministry is still wrong, even in the case of being discipled at home, I can understand. If it's not wrong in that case, then we're not dealing with the youth ministry issue.
All right, let me answer the question directly then. Let me take
Let me
this.
get Vic in there because he hasn't. I'll get to you, Josh. I'm sorry. But
No, you
I
go ahead.
want to distinguish between youth ministry and youth groups. Ministering to youth is fine. If you want to do a youth event or whatever and have the young people come out for a concert or a Bible study or whatever as a periodic thing, okay, that's cool. Ministering to youth. I think we're getting at youth groups where you have the youth isolated from their parents, being instructed by other people, whoever they are, a pastor and leaders and whatever, being instructed away from their parents. That's the issue, because kids should sit in the service with their parents. That is a big part of it. They need to sit in the service with their parents. They can ask their parents questions. Their parents are right there to make sure that they're listening, to guide them through the scriptures as it's being taught. Having them isolated and away is an issue. And like I said, and I don't see anybody refuting this, you don't see in the Bible anywhere the youth being separated from their parents. And the only time you see anybody attempting to say, hey, the kids can't be with the adults, you see Jesus rebuke them for doing that. And so I don't even see then how you can say that it's fine. As far as it not working, Josh gave some statistics, and Pew Research, like I said, released some statistics. I pulled them up. Says 1 in 4 adults under the age of 30 identify as atheists or agnostic. It's 1 in 4. There's, 5 of us here right now? That would mean one and a piece of us would be like, I'm atheist or I'm agnostic. Obviously, we're all Christians, but there's the evidence and the statistics and everything are overwhelmingly showing that people that came up in the youth group generation are running from the church. They are denying God passionately. They're leaving. So I don't see how you could. It's honestly, unless you're just going to ignore all the facts, it's not a question of is it working or not. It's a question of what do we do about it, because it's not working. Everything says it's not working.
I feel like that's a correlation issue, because it's easy to relate it to youth ministry, but you can't sit there and dice up because of the youth ministry and because of the advent of the youth ministry. That's why we have these overwhelming statistics. I mean, it could be anything from the technology that we have now and the easy access to sin. It could be that somebody treated them wrong in their home, but we're automatically correlating it to youth ministry. That's why I like what Corey said earlier, talking about giving them even a small percent chance in the youth ministry. So let me ask you guys this. Go ahead.
It has to be correlated back to the church. You're saying they're in sin, they're running from God. So obviously, besides the fact that man is evil and rejects God, but obviously there's some type of spiritual discipline that is not taking place. And when you look at the majority of people, 18 to 30, that are in America right now, that were in the church, were in a youth group. If they're leaving when they're 18, then what else do I correlate it to? They're not getting the spiritual discipleship necessary to create true conversion.
But my point is, if that age group is sitting in the regular adult church, you can't pull those statistics because that's not happening. But if they were in a regular adult church, I believe that Corey's point is that you'll probably see a lot more running from the church at that age group. Hey, correct me if I'm wrong.
Now you're talking about hypothetical. You're talking about imaginary stuff that doesn't exist.
Absolutely right, because my point is you can't make a direct correlation without an adverse statistic to support it. You can't say.
So you see in the 1970s, so before the 1970s, there was not a major youth group initiative, a youth group movement. Let's keep in mind that from the Dewey Decimal System, from the Dewey age-segregated ministry that started in the 1900s, that's when that started. Before then, churches did not segregate by age at all. So we're saying from the time of the apostles walking around with dirty feet and sandals until just 40 years after the Civil War, churches, Christian churches, were not segregated by age. And then all of a sudden, we started doing it in this country. And then in the 1970s, after we borrowed, like Joe had mentioned, I'm going to name it, the corporatism model. We looked at the corporations around us and kind of pulled that model for our churches. And then we looked at our school system and we pulled that model into our churches for how we teach. And what we've done is we've adopted the culture around us. But here's the key kicker. At the same time as we see people, young people, rapidly abandoning the church, so the numbers are going down in that way, we see a massive increase in youth ministry degrees being taught and pumped out from seminaries, and you also see a massive influx of youth ministers and youth ministry programs. And here's one question I have with youth ministry. So when it comes to youth ministry, you have basically the reformers there's three different models. There's the entertainment model. We're gonna hook you in with something nice and shiny, lasers and fog machines. There's the charismatic youth leader model. The youth leader is so cool with his tight jeans and his hair just so over the eye, and he's into cool stuff. I want to hang out with him because I'm a teen. He speaks my language, and he likes the music I like. Or the third model, the information-based model, where you say, let's quit all these fun and games. We're going to teach hard. We're going to preach the word. We're going to be in the gospel. We're going to have great songs with great, theological, just rich music. Okay? Those are the three types of youth groups we're seeing. But at the end of it, they're still not working, and people are still leaving. And this is a guy I want to quote for you guys. This is Mike Yaconelli. So Mike Yaconelli is a youth ministry guru. He is one of the people that we look to in this country when it comes to how to do youth groups. And he's an avid supporter of the age-segregated model of youth ministry. He says, the curtain must be pulled back. If we are going to keep young people involved in the church, and if we are to renew our congregations, we must first acknowledge that many of our current forms of youth ministry are destructive. Destructive. And this is a guy who's pro-youth ministry, calling it destructive. And he goes on to say, the youth leader as savior approach, extrapolated from parachurch ministries like Young Life and Youth for Christ, has generally been destructive for all concerned. Alone and segregated from the church community, youth ministers are soon exhausted. Expected to be walking icons of the risen Christ, they are not allowed to be fallible, and their own need for Christian nurture goes unmet. Left as the sole mediator between adult congregations and youth congregations, youth ministers quickly become isolated, lonely, and spiritually alienated. And even with the most well-intentioned ministers, the bait-and-switch strategy rarely works. Teenagers often accept the youth minister as their personal savior, but are rarely able to transfer their devotion to Jesus Christ. So again, all of these models are destructive, and you guys had said, Corey, you said earlier, if discipleship's happening in the home and they're getting fed there, why can't we still have youth ministry, essentially? Like, what's so bad about it? And the bottom line is, the church, if Sunday mornings stopped happening, churches everywhere, the church should still be going forward. Church is not Sunday morning. Church is 7 days a week. The church is the people. So it's not a matter of, let's not put the kids in youth ministry, let's put them in big church, because that's going to solve all our problems. No, take them out of youth ministry, abolish that, put them back in the normal church, and then there, teaching parents to actually do what they're supposed to be doing 6 days out of the week when they're not in church. That's the solution. It's not Sunday morning. I mean, you can't do it. You can't beat out media, and you can't beat out the school system because they have more time with the kid than you do on Sunday morning for 2 hours. It's impossible. It can't be done. It has to be the parents.
So what do you do with all the successful youth ministries and people have life-changing stories and they say, man, my youth ministry really helped me out. My youth ministry helped me change my life. I couldn't go to my pastor, but I can go to my youth minister because he can do these things for me. So if you say let's abolish youth ministry as a whole, you're going to lose a whole lot of people for the sake of something that you feel like is not biblical, but at the same time, it's helping a lot of people. But it's like you're not like, I mean, I don't see the difference between people that go to the regular service and don't stay than people that go to youth service and don't stay. Like,
you know why you don't see the difference?
Your aim is to help everybody, but you're not going to get everybody. That's
Corey,
anything.
What you've essentially done, and here's the kicker, and this is the Doug Fields quote I read at the beginning, and I'll pop over to it again. He says, any youth ministry is capable of growth when it's built on God's purposes for the church. Here's the hidden secret. Every youth ministry, what does it have? A pastor, a congregation, their own style of music, their own theology, their own philosophy.
That's not true.
Cultures.
It's not true.
It's a subculture within the church. It's a church within the church. Why duplicate the efforts? Why, if the youth ministry is going so hard, so right with the gospel, and many of them can be, if that's the case, okay, cool. Then stop having big church and bring all those people over to the youth group so they all can sit there under this amazing preaching.
But why would you do that? Because everybody's at different points in their lives. I might not be at a point where I might not understand the message that my pastor's preaching, but my youth minister is giving the same message. He's just doing it in a different way. Why would I stop
intelligent
something?
Enough to understand?
Huh?
You're saying the kids today aren't intelligent enough to understand the sermon that's given in the main congregation?
Absolutely.
These
kids are not.
Okay, so we can teach kids calculus and the Pythagorean theorem. We can teach them history and biology.
Dude,
we can teach them all these things.
How many kids are getting physics and biology and calculus and all that stuff?
Huh?
And that's natural stuff. Things of the spirit are spiritually discerned. So you can't.
So that just refutes your
separate.
Point. Intelligence is natural.
No. You can't throw everybody in one box and say everybody learn. And if you can't learn from this one person, I'm sorry. There's nothing else for you.
Oh no!
That's what you're doing.
Don't get me wrong. It's not. That's not the way at all. It's not the only the pastor can teach. Everybody else stop talking. No, it's let's concentrate our efforts, put everyone back together as one body, one church body, and then allow them all to grow in fellowship and worship together as one group.
That's stupid, though, because...
Why is that stupid? Corey, keep in mind, please, brother, keep in mind that what you're pushing so hard for to solve the problem wasn't a problem for 1900 years.
Well, as the earth progressed and as we got...
Nothing's new under the sun, brother.
The earth The earth, it changes. It evolves. You know what I'm saying? As children and as teenagers and as adults, we have different needs. So we have a system in place set up to where my youth minister as a youth can meet this need. And then it's a set up so that by the time you're an adult, you're ready for the big service. Like, it's not like...
But you're separate...
How do you deal with
separate gospels, separate ministries?
No, it's the same thing. It's the same gospel.
Should we not have any separate ministries? Should we not have women? Should we not have men? I'm not saying one way or another, but should we not have men's ministry, women's ministry? Should we not have...
the Bible shows that.
Please explain to me why the biblical answer to lust for men is different when you're 12 and you have pornography on your iPhone, or you're 50 and have pornography on your iPhone and you have money and you have cars and you have time.
No.
Explain the difference between understanding your beauty as a daughter of the king and a female citizen of the kingdom. How is that different when you're 13 or 8 or 5 and when you're 40?
It's not. There's a different level of understanding.
Wait. How do you guys deal with the people in the Bible? It's in Matthew. I can't call the exact chapter. When the little children come, Jesus is teaching, and the little children come, and they push them away for the very same reasons you guys are stating, because they're young and they're not going to understand. And Jesus says, no, bring the little children to me, and he teaches them all together.
That's not why they pushed them away.
Wait a minute. How do you deal with Paul telling Timothy, do not let anybody discredit you because you're younger? You guys are basically saying they're stupid, so we have to put them over here.
You need a dumbed down message, is what they're saying.
That's not what we're saying, Vic.
Which is
what we're saying.
What you said, Corey, was we need to dumb this down because the youth.
I didn't say that. I never said that.
You
That's
said
exactly
they're
what you said.
intellectually not capable of
In terms that
understanding.
they can understand.
So there's an intellectual, there's something intellectually wrong with them that they cannot understand what adults are talking about.
So you're telling me
Spurgeon started preaching at like
hold on.
16, man.
So you're telling me if a 15-year-old goes to seminary, he should be able to understand everything that teacher is teaching him and all the big words and all the all the theological words that he's using. Because the same message, right?
Life experience that goes along with the teachings.
I'm not sure what seminary has to do. So the purpose of a seminary is to equip men who said, "I want to be a minister full-time vocationally," and for them, they go into a deeper, more rigorous, although everything
Well,
they're
now,
learning
okay.
will be taught to
Well,
the
now
people.
I'm sorry. If you sit a 10-year-old inside of a church service, he should be able to comprehend everything that pastor is saying.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, time out. Wait a second. We have everyone in one group being taught something, and you're saying the younger or may have trouble understanding it? Wouldn't it be great if they could ride home from that event with someone who loves them and is older and could mentor them one-on-one every week based on what they heard?
But why
Sunday
not
morning?
get it on Sunday morning?
Parents. The parent turns around to Johnny and says, "Hey, little 10-year-old Johnny, what do you think of the message? What do you think about this? How are you going to apply in your life this week?" And boom, there you go. You have a youth group, even better than what Joe wants. You have a youth group of 2.
I think.
Dad and his kid. Or dad
Let
and
me
his
ask you this:
That sounds
if
awesome.
let me ask you this.
That sounds awesome if they have a parent that's in church.
Okay, so that's true. That's a scope. That's true.
Yeah, 'cause I know kids-
Let's look at the. How many kids? So let's think about this for a second. What percentage would you estimate of kids who attend church go there without their parents?
I'd probably say at least 30 to 35%, probably.
Whoa.
I think that's pretty large. I think that's pretty.
No.
Hey, I went without
No.
my parents.
No, I mean, I'm talking about a lot. A lot of them come without their parents.
Heck yeah!
And I say a lot.
Based on what? I mean, where's the research for this?
No. He said what would I estimate? That's where my estimation is. I don't have it based on anything. I can't spit out any numbers. He asked me my opinion on what I would estimate, and I'm saying
Sure. No. Yeah, I mean, your opinion is definitely your opinion. I mean, it's valuable as an opinion is valuable. I'm not asking it to be
exactly. I mean, exactly. Take it or leave it. I'm saying
I'm
you
not
asked.
saying, hey, give me something on the level of a George Barna quote. I'm not asking that. I'm just saying, what do you guys think? Because, and here's the other thing, guys. Here's the other thing. Yes, youth group can catch these kids, but even still, those kids are better being kind of grafted into a mentoring family. What if they roll in every Sunday and they go sit with the Smith family? and then the dad has kind of like a surrogate kid that he's responsible for the discipleship of. And all of a sudden, he has a spiritual father. Boom, done, problem solved. Like, again, it's so beautiful. Not only is it beautiful, I mean, think about it. If you take it to the Old Testament and you look at Moses, and Moses, the idea, was it God that came to him? No, it was Moses's father-in-law came to him and said, "You're overtaxed. This is too much. You need dudes below you, and they need dudes below them, and they need dudes below them, so you can break up the kind of governing of these people." So we all know when it comes to education and discipling, Joe talked about The Apprentice, you always learn better when you have a smaller ratio.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That's the goal, is the parent with the kid, or one extra kid in a family unit. That's still going to be better than 50 kids in a room with one 40-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 20-year-old.
But you're saying that assuming that the parents have a relationship with God and are really serious about church. So
no,
you
but
know
Corey,
that
I'm talking
don't.
about the plugged-in parents.
For those parents that don't
Plugged
go to,
in
like
parents,
they just go to church as a duty, and their kids are going to church, and just by default they're going to hear the word in their youth ministry. They might be telling their parents about God. They might be schooling their parents. Youth ministry could tell their parents to where they could disciple their parents.
Can't they get that in the regular service?
Why can't they get that in the regular service? And number two, if you have a problem with your regular service, with your lead elder is unable and ineffective, we have bigger problems than what are we doing in the youth building.
That's gonna get Pastor Seiko right there. He on fire already. Hey, let me slow it down for just a second, because that's a crazy point right there. I wanted to for those of y'all watching, I know we got a lot of back and forth. You guys are saying a lot of good things. I see you guys out there. Make sure you tweet me at ScopeCClearly, hashtag Tuesday Topic Live. I wanted to throw Mike Hall in. He shot me a tweet. Shout out to Mike Hall. But he said, so am I hearing that teaching the word in a way that a child can understand is wrong?
That's what he's saying.
Say that again?
That's not what I'm saying.
All right, so address that question.
Great, okay. The question was, am I hearing that teaching the word in a way a kid can understand it is wrong?
Correct.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, as a church, and as leaders, we have a God-given duty and responsibility to teach the word, A, the way he prescribes it in the Bible, as the messages have already kind of gone over, but B, and I would say secondarily, so primarily doing it the biblical mandated way, and then number two, you're telling me that a youth pastor has a special ability to teach these kids, not special ability, you're not saying that, you're saying they can change the way they're giving their message to suit their audience, which is children. Rather, where the main pastor has to speak to a larger audience, adults, and he can't talk to them as if they're children in a sense. That's what you're kind of saying here. No, I'm not saying that dumbing it down or lowering the level down to the way kids can understand it is bad. What I'm saying is it's ineffective, as we've seen from the quotes I've given here so far, T.C. Pinckney and Barna and the Pew stuff from Victor, we see it's not working, and I'm saying the reason why it's not working, the most effective way is to change the way you're speaking about it to a kid, but not from a stage in a bullhorn type approach where you're just pumping this stuff at the kids. It's best taught, and this is actually true for adults too. It's best taught one-on-one, one-on-three, one-on-four. It's best taught in a discipleship, mentoring setting. That's what I'm saying when it comes to kids. I'm saying youth group isn't working, and it's unbiblical, and it'd be better to have those kids and us focus our time, our energy, our talents on getting them into a smaller ratio with a parent, with their parents preferably, or a surrogate parent within the church. There's your ministry. Equip parents to take on kids into their family unit and show them how a godly family is supposed to live, and they minister to that kid. And they follow up with them week by week. Non-Christians can adopt random children's babies and feed them for 18 years and kick them out the door to college, but a Christian can't take another kid from his neighborhood and call him on a Tuesday and a Wednesday and say, how's your life, kid? How's the math test? Are you kidding? Like, come on. That's what I'm talking about here. This stuff is powerful, and it's so much better because you've got a smaller ratio, so you have a higher impact. You can take the time to say, little Johnny, when we talk about justification, what we mean is that how a man can be made right with God in his eternal standing. And then you can talk about propitiation, you can get into salvation, and you can have a real conversation with this 10-year-old.
Dude, that's not going to work, Chief.
How is that not?
Corey, you know what?
I think Josh needs to be used.
Wait.
I feel the passion.
Cool.
I feel the passion. He's
Corey,
being
that's cool. If you think it's not going to work, that's awesome. I would tell you, Haddon Spurgeon started preaching at 16. He was called the Prince of Preachers, if you've ever heard of him. He started at 16. There are churches right now, Xenos Church in Ohio, look them up. They are 5,000 members, but they structure their church, 5,000 meet on Sundays. The rest of the week, they all exist, as an organism does, in home groups of 20 to 60 with a seminary-trained leader with an understudy he's discipling up, and they're agile, and they do marriages and deaths and births and evangelism and projects as a group of 60. Again, super agile, but that's not even why I'm telling you that. In addition to that, their youth ministry, which is still an issue, their high schoolers are taking turns preaching, not asking, hey, is it cool if I do everything but when it comes to sex with my girlfriend? Is God still okay with it? They're not asking questions that are so obvious like that. They're asking questions, hey, man, what's the best way to tie in my illustrations when I'm trying to talk about James chapter 4? This kid's a sophomore in high school.
I mean, that's all well and dandy.
It exists.
But I'm talking about. I mean, that's great that they're doing that in Ohio. I applaud them.
And Corey,
I'm talking about real life America. I'm talking about real life America and these kids that have no clue about James 4 and Luke 5. They have no clue about that, and
who
they
has
need
no
to be
clue about
reached.
what?
And they don't trust the pastor.
Who
because
doesn't?
They've only heard bad stuff about pastors, but they trust that dude who knows just as much as the pastor, but doesn't look like the pastor, who doesn't wear suits, but can give you that same word on a 101 discipleship, same thing you're saying, but they get that, and they found that in the youth ministry. So that's all good in your little spiritual, theological world, but in the real world, the one that we live in, that doesn't work, Chief.
Okay, so what you just said to me is there's a man who is doing everything but having the title of pastor, doing a better job of pastoring than the guy with the title and the suits. So therefore, the guy with the title and the suits, who also has the responsibility, but he's not really doing it, is disqualified? It sounds like
listen what I'm saying. Pastor. No. I'm saying for the age group that person can what's the word? Relate to, for that person, they're doing a better job than the pastor would, because the pastor is 50, 60, 70 years old. So he automatically is turned off. This 15-year-old is turned off and not going to listen to a 50, 60, 70-year-old man, but he'll listen to his youth pastor who's younger but imparting the same knowledge.
Wait a minute. Why is he not going to listen? What happened? The Bible says respect your elders and listen.
I'm not talking about Christians. I'm talking about people that aren't Christians.
So what you're saying is, in these certain situations over here, this happens, so we should make that the standard.
No. That's what I'm saying. Well, I guess I should ask this question. When I say youth group, I'm talking about reaching people that aren't Christians, not people that are Christians. That's the premise of my whole conversation.
That's not a youth group. A youth group is a church within the church for youth.
Age segregated.
No.
Time, its own room, its own sermons, its own song.
If there's a youth pastor, he's teaching the youth in the church. Maybe there's non-believing youth that come in, but that's what a youth group is. That's what everybody universally understands a youth group to be. Anything outside of that, okay. So,
and the final one thing, I still haven't heard a biblical justification. Oh, Corey, you back?
Hold on, give me a
All
second.
right, Corey's back. I still haven't heard a biblical justification for the current way we do youth ministry.
I don't think it's that deep. I don't think it's.
You don't think it's that deep? He gave some to be prophets, some to be elders, some to be encouragers, some to be evangelists. That's pretty deep, pretty straightforward.
Biblical justification.
I don't see a biblical mandate for. You're
biblical justification.
Huh?
You're breaking up.
Man.
Hey, Corey, give Verizon, man. Give Verizon next week.
You can't hear me?
Now we can.
Now we can.
Okay. I said, where's the biblical justification for gospel rap? Why can't we just do traditional music? Because that's
a whole nother.
No. Let it roll. You're saying, okay, yeah, no. So you're saying, what's the biblical mandate? Okay, cool. So, well, let me try this from a different tactic, Corey. I believe the best way to exist. Gone again. Well, I'll say for everybody else. I believe the best way to exist as a Christian and to exist as a church is to look into the Word of God, New Testament, Old Testament, and see how they structured their churches. Obviously, the times are different. We have cars, we have big houses. I mean, everything's different now. I understand from a physical perspective, but people are still the same. We still need relationships. We still need contact. We still need to talk. We still need to meet. So let's look into the Word and see what it prescribes to us, and then trust God in order to follow those prescriptions, rather than taking a pragmatic approach and trying to figure it out on our own? Why are we going outside of the Word of God to do what He's already told us how to do? There's so many prescriptions. Don't forsake coming together. Like,
Can I come in?
and there's so much prescriptive. This is how you are a Christian teaching in the New Testament. I don't understand why we need to go outside of the Bible for youth ministry, which, by the way, point number 3 still is ineffective. And point number 2 actually confounds the biblical approach by enabling parents to not have to actually teach their kids.
Hey, Joe,
I'm so lost right now.
I'm gonna get you in just a second. I just want to get some clarity real quick. Avery Brown said, as it relates to youth, if you visit a place where it happens, what would you do? So Avery, hit me with details on what you're talking about there. As it relates to youth, if you visit a place where it happens, what would you do? I need to know exactly what you're talking about, Avery, and then I'll get your question in. For everybody else that wants to get a question or comment in, tweet me at ScopeClearly. Hashtag Tuesday Topic Live. I'll get you a question or comment in. I see y'all on Facebook, but that's going kind of quick.
Seiko's just blowing up Facebook.
Yeah. Tweet me a question or comment on Twitter at ScopeClearly. Hashtag Tuesday Topic Live if you want to get that in. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
2 things. First, I want to say, Seiko, we love you. I love you, man. No hard feelings. I know you're getting on me and Corey, and that's fine. That's great. He made a comment about a half hour ago. He said, "Bro, please don't dump the problems of the family and the church on the culture. The culture is represented by families and churches, not the other way around." My response to that is, we can just dump the problem on the church. And I say that because we're supposed to affect the culture and not have it the other way around.
Amen.
And we talked about this back when we talked about the artist stuff, and we talked about how church was the original cultural influence with artistics and music, and then over a couple centuries it reversed, where now, instead of us being the trendsetters, we're taking what's already trendsetting and saying, hey everybody, we do it now too. We've got Starbucks in our church, we've got the hip hop music, we've got we've got rock and bands, we've got laser light shows and steam, and God knows what pastors are wearing today, skinny jeans. But besides that, here's the way we can look at it. If you want to say, Josh, I mean, you're my bro, and I love you, and we've all been raised in youth group, like you said. We, before we existed, youth groups were there, and obviously that's definitely a shift in the culture and within the church itself. We talked about that. The biggest thing I have is you want biblical basis for youth ministry. Obviously, like a lot of things biblically, we're not going to find something that says, and Jesus said to the youth pastor, or Jesus said, I'm calling you as the youth pastor. What we really need to look at is, 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17, Matthew 28:8 through 20, and 2 Timothy 2:2, where really we're just being told, like, we have to be mentors. We have to get mature believers and teach people. We have to teach them so that they can teach others. And in today's world, that's still the truth today. The problem is, we have more of that corporal model. You're not going to have an instant change and flux in youth ministry where we're going to have one-on-one. Now, me as a youth pastor, I'm going to do my darndest to have one-on-one with people. I really am. But I'm going to try and abide by the biblical pattern, which is to teach them and help them become mature. And if I have adult leaders and other youth leaders that are older and they're wanting to learn to be leaders, I'm going to mentor them so that I can trust them to then be more one-on-one to help build disciples up, like Jesus did with his 12. I mean, let's be honest, they were probably teenagers too. I mean, we look at Timothy, and he was a baby for Paul.
He only had 12 people he tried to disciple at once.
Yeah. What was that?
Can I make a statement? Because I see
he just discipled 12 at a time. He took 12 people and poured into them for 3 years.
I've got 6 people in my youth group, so it's a little bit easier for me to say I can do my.
You're close to the mark.
Yeah, but I can also say that I know when I got raised in youth group, I had a 30-something-year-old youth pastor, and you know what? Even though there were like 20 kids in our youth group, not only did I have good one-on-one time with him a couple times of the week, and so did other kids, but at the same time, he was mentoring and training up a couple adult leaders that made impacts, that made it their purpose to bring 5 or 6 youth into their home and disciple them and lead them. So we had the standard youth ministry of a worship service on a Wednesday or whatever it happens to look like. But outside of that, almost like the church, the bigger picture of the church, and a lot of churches do small groups, they do discipleship groups. To me, that's where we're trying to get back into the true discipleship area and training and teaching, is not just putting it all on the one senior elder, senior pastor, or like Seiko says, show me where senior pastor is in the Bible. We can't just lean on one person to train up 1,000 people in the church.
Definitely
like you said, we have to have overseers, we have to have elders and deacons and mature Christians. We have to do what 2 Timothy says and what Christ says to us in Titus. We have to teach people and train them up to be mature. And for me, that to me is a biblical basis for youth ministry, because we are discipling and teaching and training people to then go and train and disciple others. And that if that happens to be the youth, that's great. And if it doesn't, that's great.
Let me
Joe,
say
I thought you were going to respond to the black people comment.
Let me say
No,
a few
I'm white. I'm scared of you guys. I'm not doing that.
Anybody hear me? You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Does anybody hear me? Can I say a few things?
Nah.
No.
First of all, just because something works doesn't mean it's right. So I don't care if it works or not. That doesn't make it right. Second of all, I hear a lot of people talking about culture. DJ Noble, I see you saying that the church was founded in a different type of culture than we exist in today. The culture we exist in today is identical to the culture that existed when the early church was started. Humanistic, cultural relativism, Greek philosophy was huge, which is what we've gotten back to today. Not to mention that the church matured in the Roman Empire, which is identical to America and the Western Europe Empire today. It's the greatest empire that ever existed, completely secular. And that's the environment the church matured in. We're living in the same exact type of environment today. So the cultural stuff is irrelevant. It's the same culture, yet they did it the way we see in the Bible, and everybody's saying, oh, the culture's changed, so we have to do it this way. That's a straw man argument. That's irrelevant completely to the topic. In the Bible, we see children with their parents being taught from Genesis to Revelation. That's all we see. You never see children, youth, young adults, old adults, anything separated out, segregated into groups being taught. If you find it in the Bible and can show it to me, I'll shut up. But until you find that, it's not there. It doesn't exist. I mean, you have the children in the temple with their parents. Jesus sitting in the temple with his parents. Jesus discipled, the 12 apostles who were possibly teenagers at the time. I don't think that advocates youth ministry. I just think that just advocates him training up some teenagers, but that was all he discipled. Not to mention the hundreds of other disciples that he had, that he sent all of them out and they were of all ages. You never see in the Bible people segregated by age. It never happens. It never takes place. There's nowhere. You can't find it. It's just not how it works.
That don't mean that you shouldn't do it.
Huh?
That don't mean that you shouldn't do it.
Just it does mean you shouldn't do it. The
Corey,
Bible,
why do you say that?
Because y'all is sounding crazy. Because y'all making it sound like it's a sin to have youth ministry.
Nope, I haven't said it. Victor hasn't said it.
Like that's
We didn't say that. We don't mean that.
I didn't say it was a sin.
That's the message.
Corey, that's not what we're saying
right
man.
now. That's the message.
It's a sin. Now you're putting words in our mouths.
Agreed.
No. I said that's the message that, like, okay, just like if
Can't hear you.
I'm
Man.
not gonna say that, like, I gospel rap. It's gospel rap. Now people are gonna say, oh, I like gospel rap, and he's saying this is bad, this is a sin. That's how you guys are portraying youth ministry, as if it's bad, as if it's unbiblical, as it's simple.
It's unbiblical, dude.
Something can be unbiblical. When I say unbiblical, what I'm saying is we can't find anywhere in the scriptures a biblical justification
But is
for
it wrong?
discipling that way.
Is it wrong?
Is what wrong?
Youth ministry.
Age segregated youth ministry, yes.
Is youth ministry wrong? Yes or no?
Age segregated, yes, it's wrong. Age segregated youth ministry is wrong. And the reason why it's wrong, there's no
It's
clear
sin against
biblical
God.
mandate. The approach
So it's
actually
against
works
that.
against the biblical method, the biblical model, because it enables parents, as Joe had already said, as Joe has kind of given us evidence for, it and said he doesn't like, it enables parents to not have to disciple their kids, so they drop them off over youth ministry with a youth
That's
pastor.
not true. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's
And number
saying
three,
youth ministry.
Okay, well, you and Joe can talk offline about Joe's ideas because Joe had them and said them. And then third and finally, the current approach is still not working. This is George Barna. He says 85% of born-again teens do not believe in the existence of absolute truth.
I bet you 85% of born-again Christians don't believe absolute truth.
Okay, what you're saying is, hey,
No,
since
hold
my
on.
left tire's deflated,
Dinosaurs
let's
had
just
wings.
stab the right one.
Hold on. No.
I bet if I jumped off the roof of my house and wished really hard, I could fly. What are you talking about?
Dude, Corey, I think Corey has a great perspective to bring to this conversation. I think Corey's experience is completely valid, and I'm just trying to understand how you justify it with the Word of God, how you mesh it when we have these things that have been kind of brought up here. Like, what do you do with this?
Have
know?
you ever heard the term that everything's not spiritual? Some things are just, hey,
Whoa,
let's do this.
whoa.
What do you wait? Can you say more words? Can you extrapolate that? What do you mean?
Yeah. Like somebody say, hey, the devil turned my lights off today. No, he didn't. You didn't pay your bill. That's not spiritual. You just didn't pay your bill. Right?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and then speaking to youth ministry, boom, let's do something different that can still preach the gospel, but they can preach it in a way that kids and teenagers can understand. Now, we know, like, you can't that you're going to have 100% turnaround and everybody's going to get saved from it. The same with church. I just got a text message from my youth pastor who I'm turning with. He said, hey, from this past Wednesday, 8 kids just got saved. And that's when I was down from the internet and the internet went down. I just my text messages and got that. So that right there is proof that it's reaching somebody. Like,
that just
Okay,
because
first of all-
something works doesn't make it right.
but dude,
Corey.
it's not wrong. That's what I'm saying. Y'all acting like it's wrong.
Corey, here's what I'm saying.
Hey,
First
let me
of
get
all,
these. Let me get these. Let me
Can
get
I-
these. Because
Can I address Corey 30 seconds?
then Corey's gonna address you back.
Can I address
I
Corey
won't,
50
I won't.
seconds?
I won't.
Okay, you just said, again, first of all, and this is fundamental, I don't care who you are, where you come from, what you believe. The gospel of God does not return void. Okay? Is it possible to get saved in a youth ministry? Yes. Because the gospel of God, you can get saved in a bar. You can get saved in a brothel. Should we open brothel ministries and bar ministries? No. Probably not.
I have an idea.
And number two, just because someone makes a profession of faith and says, prayed the prayer to receive Christ into their heart, or came forward at an altar call, doesn't mean they're saved. It doesn't. So while conversions and people saying, oh, I believe, yeah, that's part of the process. It's somewhere in there, but people responding to the gospel. But just because you say, I believe in God, and Jesus come into my heart, and I'm going to pray this prayer, doesn't mean you're saved.
Yeah. We can't hear Corey.
I don't think he said anything. I think he just gasped.
Is Josh reformed?
Am I reformed? I've
Yeah.
got my own beliefs. I don't believe in labeling people because you can have a Baptist of 50 different stripes. But if you ask me about an idea or a topic or a theology, we can talk about it.
So one of the benefits, and look, I'm not trying to stop the discussion. It's not like, I mean, we could talk and talk and talk. One of the benefits of this show is interaction. We got a lot of people chiming in, and I want to get some of their feedback and some of their comments in, and so that's why I'm kind of trying to interject here.
Are you looking at my post?
Vic, if you can, I know we're kind of all looking at Facebook, but Vic, if you
Are you watching
Seiko, Edward. Seiko, Edward.
Oh, are you watching the one on my page?
huh?
Yeah, I'm watching the.
No, Joe. Go. Are you watching the one on my page?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. So I was gonna say if you can kind of read through and grab a couple, but I got some that I wanna hit real quick, and then just kind of be ready with one or two over your way, Vic. Let me go to Twitter first. Once again, that's at ScopeC Clearly hashtag Tuesday Topic Live. I wanna get one from E.L. Smith. Directed at you, Corey. Does Corey trust in the power of the Holy Spirit to help a 15-year-old understand while in corporate worship?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I do.
I mean, straightforward question, straightforward answer. So that was the.
Yo, y'all kill me, yo.
I'm asking the questions that are coming through.
Saved now.
What's up?
I'm probably not saved.
I also want to address Pastor Seiko too. I know we've thrown out.
Why? For what? Why would we talk to him?
I know we thrown out his name a lot, and he tagged me in one of his comments, and the thing is, I just wanted to address this for the reason of saying I'm on here making arguments and asking questions, trying to help broaden perspective, regardless of what people believe, what the backgrounds are, what the studies are. I want to ask certain questions that I feel like people would have and lead the conversation in a direction that I feel like it needs to go. Therefore, the reason I bring that up is because to put me in a certain category or to say certain things about my belief or my background or my arguments, I believe is a mistake. The discussion is the discussion for a reason, and we're going to take things away from it for a reason. So some of the things that are kind of accusatory, I believe are uncalled for, and I don't take it in a harmful manner, but I just believe that some people say base. I'm going to just leave that as where that is. I got another tweet coming through. It says, does anyone on the panel believe that expository preaching being the answer to this culture youth problem?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Go ahead and take that, Vic.
Yes. If you don't know what expository preaching is, it is taking a passage of scripture and exegeting it line by line by line.
What if they don't know what exegete means, Vic? Use regular words.
Pick up a dictionary. See, here's the thing. I don't believe in coddling people because the culture's been dumbed down. I believe in helping them get back to a point where we're educated. If you read a children's primer for elementary school kids from the early 1900s, it's extremely intelligent. Today's elementary school kids would read it and wouldn't even understand it. Shows that our culture's been
High school kids.
down.
Well, we live in today, Vic, so you got to communicate as if we live in today.
I'm not. The culture doesn't dictate my behavior. What dictates my behavior is the standard.
Well, then nobody's going to know what you're talking about then.
So let me ask you this, Vic.
Let's let Vic finish, and Vic will just define what exegete means, and he'll finish the point. What does exegete mean?
Here, break down where you break down the passage line by line. Is that better? You explain it.
Easy concept. Exegesis, eisegesis. Eisegesis would be, I want to have a youth ministry. I go into the Word of God, I look and I read and I find passages that can support my idea for youth ministry. That's eisegesis. You're going from outside the text, coming and you're starting out with your hypothesis, and then you're going to the text to pull information out to support what you want. Exegesis,
thank you.
Opposite. Exegesis is you go to the Word, you go line by line in expository style, and you say, what is the Word of God saying? Line by line, in the Greek, in the original context that the hearers heard about it, what is this saying? What does it mean? What is the impact on our life today? And you open up the Word of God and you let it speak. The message comes from the Word. You don't start out with your premise and then get support. You go to the Word, take a passage, and you open it up and you let it breathe into the people through the microphone. That's expository. That's why it's so powerful, because God is the author, not you proof texting through God's work.
Thank you for the definition. Thank you, Joshua.
Josh, remember, microphones aren't in the Bible, so we can't use those.
You know what? That's cool.
Biblical
Neither is
background.
electricity. Neither is electricity. So let's take all the power out. Neither is running
So what
water.
you're saying, Josh, is because the culture created electricity, we need to use it.
Oh no, man! Oh no! Here we go.
Again, keep in mind, this is a spiritual conversation. How do we disciple kids? Biblically, what does it say to do? It's obviously parents, but Scope, you had some. Does that answer that question? I hope it does.
Yeah, expository preaching. That's what it is, and I believe in it personally. I don't know if you could teach the Bible.
Let me throw this one more out, and then I'm gonna throw it to Vic. Get these answered or addressed as we can. I'm not sure if you meant to say Joe or not, but I'll just say he says, "Who is Joe to say youth groups don't work?" Even though he just said, even though he did just say they can work in the church. Corey and I grew up, and we watched, kids grow up in the faith. Once again, who is Joe to say youth groups don't work? Even though he just said they can work in the church.
What is
I'm not sure.
Is the right person or not, Joe?
I think he meant Josh.
I was gonna say I'm getting confused here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you kind of synthesize it and say it back?
I'll just say, okay, so who is Josh to say youth groups don't work, even though he did just say they can work in the church?
Okay, sure, I can take that. Yeah, no, definitely, I can take that. So again, the premise of our entire debate and the very nature of God and the purpose of preaching is about truth. It's about the standard. It's about the highest state of what should be and what is. So I can maintain the position that, yes, people get saved in youth ministries every day, and yes, the gospel can go forth through that venue. Of course, it's the gospel. The gospel can go forth, like I said, in a brothel or in a bar. But the key difference is I'm talking about what is biblical, what is optimum, what is best. What is the best way to do it? What should we shoot for? What should we strive towards? What's the ideal state? Ideal state would be a family integrated church model of various formats, but one that has a key focus on the family and that dynamic, and children being primarily discipled by their parents. And if they don't have parents, then by the surrogate parent that comes alongside them and personally disciples them. One-on-one, Sunday through Sunday, meeting, take them to lunch afterwards, go pick their butts up, bring them to church, and drop them off afterwards, like be in their life. So that's what I'm saying. So yes, youth group can be effective, but because again, the word of God does not return void, the gospel does not return void. However, the best way is the biblical model of parental discipleship, empowered by the instruction of the elders in a church setting.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Cool, Vic, man. Let's get a few in, man. We're running late on time. Let's get a few decent ones in if you got any.
We got 20 minutes.
We got time. What I'm saying is, to get them in and get them answered and do a wrap.
Oh man, it's only 20 of 6 here. We got all night.
We could do a bonus round with extra time. Just saying, we're all adults. We're all adults here.
Well, I gotta hurry up. I got a youth ministry to go teach, so I gotta.
Oh man, Scope, you must have like 10 kids then. That's great. By youth time out. By youth ministry, did you mean family worship time at home? Oh, you didn't. You're actually gonna go talk to someone else's kids. Okay, cool.
Parents don't approve of us. I don't mean family, because the parents don't approve of us meeting in a brothel. So it's not. It's just the kids.
Yeah, I think that's probably good to avoid brothels all the time.
What you gotta say?
Lost Corey.
This is directed at Joe and Corey, but Corey's going. says, I guess from your earlier statement, you were kind of, I think this is really directed at Corey. He's back. All right.
Just came in.
Can you hear me, Corey?
Corey, this is for you, man. Corey, you there?
I'm showing his microphone says he's muted.
I don't see that.
In the bottom right corner of his little
Bottom
time.
corner, it's the microphone with the slash through it. Just say what you gotta say, Vic. We'll go from there.
Yeah.
It says, are you saying it's the culture's fault? You guys were kind of saying the culture has changed, and because the culture has changed, that it requires us to use new methods and tactics, and that's why youth ministry is what it is. That's why youth groups exist. Are you saying it's the culture's fault? Are you saying that it's the culture's fault? That's why
It's both. Like I said earlier, in response to Seiko's comment way up there 45 minutes ago, I really think it's both. We can lump it all in the church because we can say the church is no longer being a culturally effective tool. It is not affecting the culture. But at the same time, because we are already doing how we've been doing it, we are just adapting to what's around us and trying to do it with what we can, i.e., we don't have leaders training families to be good stewards of their children or even others' children who don't have Christian parents. So we're leaving it upon, as Seiko would say, we're leaving it upon other elders and deacons that we then give a title of like youth pastor or worship pastor, etc., to then become the disciple of these areas, to become the teacher of these areas, to then disciple people that focus on different groups, i.e., age-segregated, Awanas, vacation Bible schools, etc. So, I lean both ways. It goes against both, but I mean, if we want to be biblical about it, we can say really it's us, the church, that is really at fault. We have not done what we were supposed to do, and that's to affect the world around us.
Okay. So let me see.
Corey, you back with us?
Corey.
I guess Corey's back out. Trying to get Josh, Vic, you got one? You ready?
Nah. Give me a second. You got one?
Yeah. Josh, let me throw this at you. This was coming in through Twitter. It says, I guess you don't know what it pertains to. It says, ideal is the key word in his statement. But what about right now? And I know you addressed this before. It says, but what about right now when we don't have the ideal setting?
Sure. And I think this is something that it's amazing because the church, a body of believers, it's the peoples, not the structures, so it's organic, it's alive, it's moving, it's breathing, it's thinking, it's reacting, it's adapting to the pressures around it. And what's amazing is what if we kept the office of youth pastor, if you will, but changed the mission. Rather than your focus being on the discipleship of children directly, what if we shifted that person's focus where their mission was the education of parents and equipping parents to disciple kids? We have the educational channels already there. We have the office already there. We just have to kind of retool and shift your focus from I need to teach 50 kids to I need to teach 50 adults how to disciple. And by doing that, oh my gosh, imagine if that one leader could multiply their effectiveness into 50 adults and then take those 50 adults and implant them in the house of those kids. And then imagine if the adults planted in the house of those kids had the power, authority, and God-given, state-given right to set the rules and codes of conduct for that house and reinforce what the kid learned in church and what the parents are teaching them. That would be us in a current mode. What do we do with what we have now? Because we've been doing youth ministry for 40, 50 years. How do we go from here to ideal state? How do we move back? I would say that's one option, and it would be so awesome to see that happen because, I mean, could you imagine? I just think of it like a sports team, for example, like a football team, and imagine a team where all the players, they're all B or C string players. They're all C string with one A player. Okay, yeah, you guys might get lucky and win a couple games. What if everyone's an A player? What if everyone is just cock diesel, super trained, just so great at what they do? Imagine that group working together. Imagine a church where 80% of the adults knew how to disciple and had disciples of their own. We're discipling their own kids. And if you're an empty nester, what are you going to do for 40 years, 50 years? You're going to disciple 20-somethings, disciple teenagers, disciple whoever. Like, I mean, think of how amazing that would be. Not in a youth ministry setting, but again, discipling the one-on-one, or they could be teaching people how to disciple. I mean, that's what we got to get back to. It's got to be the hard road. It's the sacrificial, the one-on-one, the inconvenient. That's where we got to get back to. You know?
And I totally agree with you on that. And you know, I'm starting to have flashbacks of my grandmother telling me stories of what it was like when she was a kid. I mean, you look, like we said, within the 50 years, look beyond 50 years. What kind of schoolhouses, we're talking old, we had schoolhouses where everybody, no matter what age they were in the same classroom with the same teacher, and they were taught all the same things at different levels, you know, and in church there was no separation of age segregation, as you want to call it, just use X's term you've thrown out there. But again, like Seiko, I mean, dude, you're right on, Seiko. It really is on the church's fault. I just kind of say the culture because we've let the culture infect us. So as the culture changed outside the four walls of the church, i.e., you know, schools started to get bigger, and they then became age segregated. They had the multiple grades, everyone's separated. We, of course, were going to do the same thing because we see it as a good thing. We're like, hey, we don't want a bunch of 4-year-olds running around the church and screaming and yelling and crying, and they need a separate place to go. Then it was, okay, well, you know what? There's middle schoolers and high schools. They like different things, so let's separate them. But I agree with you. We need to somehow reform ourselves, go back to what we should be doing, and that's discipling them more on a one-on-one basis. But we're not there right now. Let's be honest. About probably 100% of churches in America have a youth ministry, have big youth groups. Okay? What it's going to take is, like I told Seiko, is it's really going to take us to apply the cure, because we've let the culture infect us. Is it's going to take, like you, one person at a time, one discipleship at a time. You know, it'll take a long time. It's not an overnight process, and that's one thing we have to understand. I mean, we can be passionate about all our different points of view here, but I can say that I agree with you. But at the same time, we also have to look at our situations. Like with my church, it's a totally different situation than the church I grew up in. And the church I grew up in, it probably could have been more one-on-one, and in a way it was. I mean, we probably 80% of the people in my church, 20% left, 80% stayed strong. And I do attest that to the youth pastor, you know, who did make it a point to disciple each one of us, and also made sure that the adult leaders and the high school leaders we're being taught, and we're repeating that, and we're training others. But we don't see all that these days. But at least where I'm at, most of the kids that are coming to youth group, their parents aren't saved. You know what I mean? So it's even harder, because then it does fall on the responsibility of the elders and deacons in the church to take these people on and to be that responsibility.
At that point, though, it's not a youth group as much as it's you guys taking on kids whose parents aren't saved, who come from broken households and stuff, and discipling them in the Lord. But the majority of youth groups that we see are in established churches that are doing fine. The parents are there because big churches normally exist in well-to-do areas. So the parents are there.
That's not true.
Who said that?
Need you ask?
Yeah, you sound like you was gonna kill him.
Because I hate when people churches are supported by money. People in impoverished areas don't have the money to support.
I came from a mega church, and it was not in no nice neighborhood.
Anyway.
I did, just so you know, your statement wasn't true.
All right.
Everyone's entitled to their opinions.
It's not an opinion.
It's not.
It's a
true.
fact.
Not an
I
opinion.
don't know how the statement couldn't be true when I said a lot of the mega churches are in well-to-do areas.
Beyond the fact, that's not the main point of Victor's statement. His main point was that in these larger churches, the grand majority of the kids have parents who attend.
and they have established youth groups, and the youth are taken off to their own. A lot of some of not,
Separate
let me be
buildings.
careful. Some of them even have separate buildings.
Yes.
They have youth buildings, and the youth are in another building. My point being, in established churches where the youth
Bathroom
is
and
segregated.
kitchen and an AV system and their preacher. Like, it's a separate church.
It's a separate church. It is. It's a separate church. That is common for youth groups in America.
Yeah, yeah.
Yo, I wanted to plug something really quickly, 'cause I didn't plug anything personally. Earlier, I want to plug something, and what made me think of it was Joe's comment about kind of like what we're doing right now and how we don't. This is a newer model we're trying to go towards. There are actually already churches that have been functioning like this way for at least 10 to 15. Some actually never went to age segregated, but there are others that are doing it today. So this isn't something we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. It's already was invented in the Bible, and now it's still being used. So I'm going to plug this website. This is the website for it's a national center for family integrated churches. You can go to N as in Nancy, C as in cat, F as in Frank, I as in igloo, C as in cat, ncfic.org, and actually see an entire organization that's nationally linking all of these churches that have rejected age-segregated ministry and want to restore the biblical pattern of age-integrated worship, discipleship, and evangelism. So, not alone. ncfic.org.
I wanted to say one other thing because we keep talking about the culture change. Joe, you were kind of talking about, you go back and you had the schoolhouses where everybody was together, in church everybody was together, and we moved away from that as the culture changed, which again I'll say culture shouldn't dictate what we do. But the other thing I find interesting is you see us moving away from that model, and what you see is the dumbing down of American society. It's very obvious. I see somebody posted a comment that says there's statistics that contradict ours that are coming from Barna. That's fine. It's very obvious. You see this overwhelming amount of statistics and research and evidence. We see the culture being dumbed down. We see the culture becoming more secular. And the key thing is, because honestly, who cares about the culture? The world is wicked and evil and is perishing. The Bible says that. The problem is that the church is becoming more secular. The church is becoming more dumbed down. And that's really where the issue is. And we see that, and we keep following the culture, and we keep chasing after the culture, trying to mimic them. And we see the American church very much crumbling. More churches are closed down today. More churches close their doors every year than churches being started, which is a gigantic shift in American culture from not even from 20 years ago. That now churches are closing their doors just in huge numbers. You can look at the statistics for that. Some people don't like statistics. I don't know what to give you. The other thing I want to say is a lot of the comments you were making, Corey, and some of the stuff you were saying, Joe, I guess my question is not the Bible the standard by which we live? So I don't care if it works. It's not there in the Bible. It's not biblical, and that is the standard that we live by. The hip-hop thing, another straw man argument, there's poetry in the Bible. Hip-hop is poetry. It's irrelevant. I just don't see
Psalms? Anyone heard of a psalm before in the middle?
Can y'all see me?
Yeah.
you can see it. But my
Y'all
point
see me?
being that
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
The Bible gives us a very detailed model for the church. It shows us how the church should operate. We can see how it operated. We can see how it's operated from the 1st century up until the 19th century. And then pretty much after that, you have a lot of new things coming into the church. And it never operated the way that it's operating now. I think that should be a signal that something's very wrong. Not to mention, we see the American church dying, which again should be a signal that something's very wrong.
Hey, Vic. We'll do a wrap up. I was gonna see if you had anything else that you needed to get in as far as from the people. do we're approaching 9 o'clock. So what we'll do is we'll do it by seniority as far as the show. I'm gonna go around, make sure you guys throw out your info, but then give a closing statement if there's something you wanted to say, there's something you wanted to leave the people with, or there's something that you didn't get in. Just take a minute, 30 seconds or whatever, and just kind of throw in what you wanted to say. So what we'll do is we'll throw it to Josh, and then we'll throw it to Joe, and then we'll go to Corey and then Vic. So Josh, man, I know you kind of wanted to get in something there a couple minutes ago. So tell them, make sure you give them your information one more time, your name, your information, and then just kind of your quick closing statement. And I feel like we got to do a part 2 to this because there's so many questions and so many things that I want.
And bring Seiko on.
Yeah.
There's so many things I wanted to say and so many questions I had lined up, and then also there's a lot of directions that we didn't go that we could have gone, and I know Corey kept getting disconnected. So once he gets frozen, and then we can proceed with part 2. So anyway,
Can y'all see me now?
Yeah. Let Corey go first before he gets cut off again.
Yeah, I should, but I want to just be respectful to seniority. That's just kind of the way I chose to do it. So let's go ahead, throw it to Josh first.
Okay, cool. Well, definitely appreciate the time to come on here and flap the gums. Appreciate you guys, and I want to thank for Corey and Joe coming on. It's always good to have these conversations with people who hold a dissenting viewpoint. And I think it's really powerful because you guys are in a very powerful position with the access you have to these kids. You have an impact on them. You have an impact in your churches where you're currently serving, currently attending. So I wanted to say, kudos to you guys, and I hope Curry's gone. I hope you guys, kind of think about what we talked about, and I'll be thinking about what you guys have talked about. As far as my closing statements, I will piggyback off of what Vic said. Very passionately, Vic said, don't you think the Word of God should be the standard for our faith and practice, how we should live our lives? I'm reminded of the passage in 2 Timothy where it says, that the Scriptures are useful to equip us for everything necessary for faith and practice. So I think the Scripture should be the fundamental blueprint on how to run a church. On top of that, I'll just kind of round up my main points again. I think the problem with youth ministry, number one, there's no clear biblical mandate. You don't see anywhere where it teaches age-segregated ministry, just not in there at all. Number one, and kind of a part B to that is that even in its best scenario, all it's doing is reduplicating the efforts of the main church. Number one. Number two, the current approach is actually working against the biblical model because, as we discussed, it enables parents to shirk their responsibilities of discipleship, knowing they're dropping their kid off for youth ministry where the youth pastor is going to be the one to actually do the heavy lifting. So that's number two. And then number three, again, the current approach is not working. Youth ministry as it stands today is not effective. So I would encourage you guys in my closing statement, because I want to provide a solution, not just point out the errors here. I want to say that going back to the biblical model for what has worked for 1900 years, and we can go beyond that into the times of the Jews, pre-Christ, his incarnation at least, to getting it back to being about the family and about parents with their kids. That's the best way to teach. It's the best way to disciple. You have the most face time. You control the environment they live in. You control what they eat, what they wear. You're liable unto God for how you raise those kids. So I think the church fundamentally needs to shift its focus from age-segregated ministry, trying to meet the needs of every little possible demographic, and turn it back to equipping the saints for ministry. Parents for their kids, and then everyone for those they walk through life with. And you can hit me up on Facebook. First name's Joshua, and last name Bowditch, Bowditch, like bowing into a ditch. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Joe, what you got, man?
Yo, I love. Yeah, he's right there. He's right there. I see his nose flaring right there. I see all the hairs.
Yes.
No disrespect to you, but I'm gonna throw you on just in case you get disconnected or whatever. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw you on first.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. Yeah, definitely appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody's opinion. Definitely, I love to engage in healthy conversation like this. I think that we have to go with. I know a lot of people say, if it's not working, youth ministry, we shouldn't do it. But I'm a firm believer that if it's reaching somebody, then why stop it? Even though it's not reaching everybody, it's reaching somebody. And there's a lot of somebodies around the world that need it, that would die spiritually if they didn't have this youth ministry. So I'm an advocate for the good ones that are happening. And I say keep pressing, keep fighting the fight. We're all going to make mistakes. We all might not do it perfectly. But at the end of the day, it's reaching somebody successfully, and that's important. Secondly, I want to say that anything that's not sinful or fundamentally that's that's wrong, it's just an opinion. So we have to understand that our stance on these issues are more matters of opinion than matters of we should stop this because it's sinful, or we should stop this because God says don't do it. Everybody knows my information already. That's about it. Definitely appreciate the time. Appreciate the people that disagree with me. But for real, when I say that though, I definitely appreciate, because you don't always want to have yes men people agree with you. You want people to challenge you so you can grow and mature at the same time. Challenging good way. So yeah, appreciate y'all.
Hey, just for the sake of people that are seeing it at the end, man, throw out your information anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Hit me on Twitter. I am C Goss. Hit me on Facebook. C Goss FOE. Instagram. I am C Goss.
Joe, man.
Yo, what's up, Scope? I'm chillaxing, my man. Like we've said before, really, it does depend on situations that you're in the midst of. My church is different than your church. My church is different than what Josh is trying to advocate, and that's fine. But the thing that we can say is biblically mandated is we need to do what we're called to do, and that's to teach and disciple and help people to grow maturely in Christ. Now, if that means I happen to have 6 or 7 youth that have been dropped off by their unsafe parents because they're in jail or they're doing drugs, then so be it. But I will do my darndest to follow through with what we're biblically supposed to do and what I'm called to do and that Christ has taught us to do. So, that's where I stand on it. We've got hurting people outside and inside the church. And it's our awesome place, like Josh said, it's our powerful place to be able to preach to these people, bring the word to them, make it real and alive to them, and because a lot of them haven't read it or even opened up a Bible, especially youth, especially today's youth, and especially tomorrow's. So, my stuff, Salmo Joe for the Twitterverse. Everything else, if you're friends with Vic, you can find me, because I'm the only one with that really long last name that's not African looking. So.
That's
You
great.
just said something racist right there. I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay, Alan Janae.
It's French. It's French. It's French. It's French.
It's French. All right, and my man, I can't say enough about this dude. So much credit. And even today, I was like, I might not be able to make the show because of this, and this. He was like, all right, I'll roll with it. Any and everything, man, always holding it together. I really appreciate this dude, my man, Vic Stanley. Stanley, talk to him real quick. Let him know what's up and let him know where
Stanley Steamer.
Yeah, so I guess a few things. One, personal experience doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The first thing you have to appeal to is authority. If your personal experience then lines up with authority, then it can become relevant. But our personal experiences are jaded or corrupted by our senses, by our presuppositions, and our worldviews and different things like that. So you definitely have to appeal to authority first. Just because something works doesn't mean it it's right. It may work, doesn't mean it's right. They give heroin to people in the hospital, and it works. That doesn't mean I should go hit up some dope boy and get some heroin and shoot it up. What was the other thing I was gonna say? Lost my thought. It was a personal experience. Doesn't matter. Authorities first. Just because something works doesn't mean it's right. You can't take anomalies and make them the standard. Just because over here good things are happening and over here good things are happening, and there are anomalies outside of the mainstream of things. You can't take that and make it the standard. That doesn't work. You can't do that. And pragmatism is never the answer. Just because you can put something into practice and you're getting results doesn't mean you should do it. So I just want people to remember that personal experience only becomes relevant when it is subject to the authority. So Scripture, my personal experience outside of Scripture is irrelevant. Just because it works doesn't mean it's right. You can't take the anomaly and make it the standard, and pragmatism is never the answer. Catch me on Twitter, Vic Jr. 89. Check out vicsponderings.blogspot.com.
Word. It's after 9. Look, thank you guys for keeping it locked right here, for always tuning in, for asking questions, for basically this is your show. If you want to interact, hit us up, and we'll get questions, comments answered or responded to. Mike Hall wanted me to tell Josh, thank you, man, for your answers. He asked a couple specific questions that you answered back to him, so he wanted me to personally tell you thanks. So if you see Mike Hall online, holler at him. Look, panelists, thank you guys not only for respect, not only for viewpoints, just being candid, being yourselves, and lending your time to the show. Time is one of the most precious things, honestly, that we have, and you guys just faithfully give it just for the good of the people and the good of perspective, so people can learn from us and be challenged, like Corey said, and grow. So I really do appreciate you guys coming on. There's so much left unsaid. I really do feel like there's a part 2. Hopefully you guys are down if we need you. But thank you guys once again for tuning in. To all the panelists, thank you guys. If you guys have any more questions or comments, please feel free to hit up the website or to hit up the Twitter. Hit up Vic, hit up Josh, hit up Corey, hit up Joe. Just continue to engage, continue to ask questions, or continue to provide evidence or whatever the case is. But the bottom line is continue to grow one way or another. Take your emotions out of it. Vic even said something about it that smacked even me. I'm sure smacked you guys. It's basically, when it boils down to it, your personal viewpoint, when it doesn't align with authority or it doesn't align with God, doesn't necessarily matter. So seek truth. Let's continue to grow, right or wrong. So thank you guys once again, and God bless. Another Tuesday topic. We'll catch you next week, 7 p.m. Yeah. Peace.